Hey guys, tonight we drift back to the year 1421, where candlelit halls and carved oak chairs cradle the quiet whispers of the past. In the misty, forgotten village of Elderbridge, tucked deep in a slow-moving valley, a gentle debate lingers in the air. Which chair, among all ever made, truly holds the heart of comfort? At its center stands a red-roofed library, its wavy glass windows glowing like stars caught in wooden frames. Inside, stories rest between shelves, and old chairs wait patiently for good company. Before settling in, I gently asked viewers to take a moment to like the video and subscribe only if they truly enjoy what I share here. I also invited them to share in the comments where they're watching from and what time it is in their corner of the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The year is 1421. The world beyond Elderbridge may be changing, kings rising and falling, ships setting sail, towers climbing toward the sky, but here nothing hurries. Elderbridge lingers like a lullaby. The fog comes and goes as it pleases. The bells from the stone chapel ring whenever someone remembers to wind them. And in a great oak hall at the center of the village, where sunlight and candlelight meet across a floor of time-worn flagstones, the townsfolk gather not to argue or boast, but simply to talk, to share thoughts, to remember. And once each season, they return to the same peculiar tradition, to muse gently, almost reverently, about chairs. Yes, chairs, not thrones, not battlefields, not monuments, just chairs. The kind your grandmother once sat in as she peeled apples. The one you found beside the fireplace in a cottage you can't quite recall. The sort that creaks just slightly when you lean back into it and sigh. In Elderbridge, such chairs matter. Not for power, not for wealth, but for what they hold. Time, memory, stillness. And so it is, in the spring of 1421, that our story quietly begins, not with a fanfare, but with a chair. Or, more accurately, with many chairs, each with its own shape, its own warmth, its own subtle presence in the world. And over the next nights, we will walk slowly through this village and listen not just to what the people say, but to what the chairs remember. You may notice as we go that there is no rush. The sun will rise gently. The rain will fall without urgency. And though we begin now in the fresh hush of early morning, it may take many days before we pass back into night. This is not a tale of urgency. This is a tale for resting. Our path begins just before dawn. The air is soft and damp, tinged with the scent of damp stone and earth warmed by candlelight. Mist clings to the trees, curling in their branches like old lace. Somewhere, a wood pigeon murmurs, and a horse in a distant stable shifts its weight with a sleepy shuffle. No one is in a hurry. The whole village, it seems, is caught in a great pause. Cobblestones stretch out in curving paths, flanked by low stone walls and hedges heavy with dew. Along these streets, the cottages lean inward, like they're whispering to each other. Their roofs sag slightly with the weight of years. Ivy clings to their walls in gentle patterns, and rainwater collects in little hollows on their windowsills. A candle burns behind one pane, flickering slightly as if in greeting. Farther on, we cross a small stone bridge, Elderbridge itself, for which the village was named. The stream below babbles with no particular aim, just a steady rhythm like the quiet breath of the land. You might pause here, resting your hands on the mossy railing, listening to the water as it swirls around the smooth stones beneath. The air smells faintly of lavender and wood smoke, and just past the bend, the path begins to climb the hill. Up this slope, trees bend low, their limbs framing the way as though remembering how often feet have passed here. At the hill's crest stands the library, a building neither grand nor humble, but wholly serene. Its timbers are dark and weathered, its roof curled at the corners, its door heavy and warm to the touch. When it opens, it does so without a sound. Inside, the air is still. It smells of ink, wax, and wood. The shelves stretch high and close together, filled with volumes bound in linen and leather, their spines softened with age. Lanterns hang from wrought iron hooks, casting long golden shadows across the stone floor. And in every quiet corner, there are chairs, some cushioned, some carved, some almost forgotten. It is here that the ledger was found. A book not listed in the catalog, tucked into the bottom of a wide oak drawer that hadn't been opened in decades. The binding is cracked, but sturdy, the pages thick with time. And in its inked lines, someone long ago wrote carefully, lovingly, of chairs. Each page is a small meditation, a study not of measurements or utility, but of presence, of how a chair, simply by being there, can change a room, how the curve of a backrest might invite a certain sort of silence, how the width of a seat can cradle not just a body, but a state of mind. The townspeople say it was written by a master chairmaker who never signed his name, that he wandered from village to village, crafting not just chairs, but moments. And though his hands are long gone, his words remain, curling across the pages like smoke. And so the library elders proposed a quiet idea, to read from the ledger again, aloud, each spring, and to let each person, if they wished, bring a chair to share, not to compare or judge, but simply to listen, to sit, and to remember. That was the beginning of the great chair debate of 1421, a debate without sides, a discussion without winners, a story carried not by voices raised, but by chairs placed softly on old floors, a tale of comfort, memory, and the way stillness can hold the world. And as you rest here, beside this story, you're invited to walk with us through Elderbridge, to linger, to notice, to sit, if only in your mind, in chairs that once meant something to someone, chairs that still carry echoes. This is how it begins, with soft light, gentle wood, and the hush of a forgotten town that remembers everything. Morning rises slowly over Elderbridge, not in bright bursts or bold light, but with a quiet confidence, like someone gently opening their eyes after a long rest. The mist moves lazily over the rooftops, slipping between chimneys and curling around stone chimney pots, as if it has nowhere in particular to be. There's a softness to the air, as though the village itself is holding its breath, waiting for the day to begin not with motion, but with presence. The houses of Elderbridge are older than memory. Built from river stones and timber, darkened by rain and time, they lean slightly from years of settling into the land. Their windows, paned with uneven glass, catch the pale morning light like slow-moving water. Here and there, a shutter hangs loosely, not from neglect, but from the long rhythm of things that were never hurried to begin with. Everything feels in place, not perfect, not polished, just right in its quiet wear. The cobbled streets glisten with dew, each stone reflecting a tiny piece of sky. Moss grows confidently between the cracks, untouched by shoes that walk softly, if at all, at this hour. Along the curves of the main path, low stone walls border tidy gardens, their iron gates open just enough to welcome the breeze. Vines stretch out from behind fences like sleepers reaching for the sun. In Elderbridge, everything seems to stretch slowly, light, vines, time. A dog somewhere, old and content, gives a half-hearted bark and curls again into rest. A baker's window glows faintly from within, and the warm, dense scent of rising dough drifts into the street like an offering. It mingles with the earthy perfume of wet leaves and old wood, creating the kind of air that seems to encourage silence and deep, slow breathing. No carriages rattle by. No shouts fill the lanes. The world here hums in low tones, steady and unbothered. There is a bridge, low and broad, that arcs gently over the village stream. Elderbridge owes its name to this crossing. It was built long ago from wide, flat stones smooth underfoot and slightly bowed from centuries of passing steps. Ivy climbs its railings, and every morning the mist lingers here just a little longer, reluctant to move on. Water below flows clear and slow, carrying with it fallen leaves, small petals, and a vague memory of storms from seasons past. It speaks in a whisper, never in a rush. As the sun climbs behind the hills, it doesn't pierce the fog, but rather leans into it, turning the whole village a soft, golden gray. Shadows stretch, but never harshly. Every shape the roof lines, the chimneys, the leaning fences, becomes a blur, softened by the shifting light. The village exists like a memory in mid-dream, where edges don't quite hold, and everything feels more felt than seen. Near the center of Elderbridge, the town square begins to warm beneath the mist. The stones here are broad and uneven, warmed by the sun's gentle patience. A few wooden carts, weathered and still, stand beside closed market stalls. Cloth awnings, faded by decades of light and rain, hang limp over empty tables. Birds land quietly on the edge of the fountain, their movements almost ceremonial, as if knowing they're part of something held sacred by time. And in this square, just at the edge where cobblestone meets earth, stands the great oak hall. Its timbers are thick, dark with age, and its beams curve with grace, not weight. Inside, the floor is swept clean and smells faintly of beeswax and dried lavender. Rows of chairs sit waiting, not arranged with precision, but placed with care. They are all different, no two alike, yet somehow they all belong. The village doesn't speak much of the debate that happens here each spring. It is not marked on calendars or carved into stone. It simply happens without announcement, without fanfare. People bring their chairs, their thoughts, and their silence. They sit, they listen, they share. And slowly, softly, the story of comfort continues to unfold. But not yet. Not today. This morning belongs to the village itself, to its doors still closed, to its fireplaces not yet lit, to the rhythm of mist drifting over moss. Soon, the library on the hill will open. Soon, someone will walk the bridge with a book under one arm and a thought tucked behind their eyes. But for now, Elderbridge remains half asleep, content in its stillness. Even the birds do not rush. Their songs are short and low, offered like small poems to the morning air. A cat moves across a windowsill and settles into a spot that has caught a sliver of light. From within one home, the quiet clink of a spoon against ceramic suggests tea has been poured. These are the movements of a place that never forgot how to slow down. If you were to stand in the middle of the square now, you would hear not silence, but softness. The stream, the birds, the wind through chimes on a nearby porch. You might feel as though you're listening not to a place, but to time itself, time that does not tick or march, but breathes. Elderbridge has no monument to war, no hall of fame. Its pride lies not in glory, but in the care it takes to remain just as it is. Its people move with intention, not speed. Their homes are lived in, not displayed. And their stories unfold not in drama, but in the spaces between sentences, the way a chair is pulled back, the way a door is held open, the way the air shifts when someone walks into a room and quietly chooses a place to sit. By midday, the fog will lift a little. Children may skip stones in the stream. The blacksmith might open his shutters to let the light fall across his tools. But for now, the whole village is held in a soft pause. And it's within this pause that our story continues to unfold. We are not in a hurry. We are in Elderbridge. At the top of the gentle slope overlooking Elderbridge, where trees arch low and the grass feels cushioned beneath each step, stands a building that seems to breathe along with the wind. The library, neither grand nor forgotten, rests on the hill like an old friend who never left. Its roof is made of red tiles, chipped and softened by rain. Ivy curls across the southern face, winding through the latticework around the upper windows. Birds often pause here, landing on the old chimney, as if they too are drawn to the quiet inside. A low wooden fence, barely waist-high and softened by moss, surrounds the building. The gate is always ajar, swinging slightly in the breeze, its latch worn smooth by many gentle hands. As you step through, a scent of earth and paper greets you, a mixture of time and care, of ideas that have settled deeply into wood. The path leading to the door is lined with flat stones, cracked gently by roots that nudge them from below, not to break them, but to remind them they are part of something still growing. The door itself is heavy but patient. A thick iron ring hangs at its center, but no one uses it. They push gently instead, with the quiet trust that it will open, as it always has. Inside, the light shifts. The warmth of morning gives way to something richer amber shadows, golden beams, and the soft hush of thick walls and thick books. The air in the library holds a different kind of stillness. It's not the absence of sound, but the presence of peace. Floorboards creak only slightly underfoot, as if whispering a welcome. Wooden beams rise high overhead, crisscrossing like the ribs of an upturned ship, as though the library itself is sailing slowly through the sea of time. Books rest on every shelf, pressed close together, their spines faded to soft browns and greens. Many are hand-bound, their titles inked in looping script. Some sit unevenly, their pages slightly warped by time and weather. No one ever rearranges them. No one needs to. Those who visit this place find what they're meant to find. And if a volume is not there one day, it's simply waiting in another corner to be discovered in its own time. In the center of the library sits a round wooden table. Its surface is marked with rings where warm mugs have rested and deepened with grooves from countless pages turned upon it. Surrounding the table are chairs, each one different. One is high-backed and stern. Another is low and worn, with the seats sagging slightly in the middle. One is made of iron with a thin cushion that once was blue. And one, smallest of all, is carved from birch, its back shaped like a heart, its legs painted in faded green. These chairs are not for matching or for show. They were placed there over many years, brought by those who felt something for them, an attachment not easily explained. Some belonged to librarians long gone. Others came from old study rooms or garden porches or quiet corners no longer remembered. Each chair, in its own quiet way, tells a story. Toward the back of the library is a staircase, narrow and winding, its banister polished by years of fingertips sliding along its curve. It leads to the loft above, where windows open out onto the trees. Here the light is softest in late morning, falling across the floor in ripples of gold. Small tables sit near the windows, their legs uneven, their drawers filled with forgotten notes and ink-stained handkerchiefs. A cat, gray and slow, often naps on the windowsill, undisturbed by time or visitors. In one corner of this loft, half hidden behind a tall shelf of atlases and agricultural journals, there is a drawer. It is not locked. Its knob is brass, cool to the touch, and slightly loose in its setting. When pulled, it opens with a deep, steady breath, revealing something warm but precious, a ledger, wrapped in thin linen, tied with a pale green ribbon. This ledger is the reason the library feels so central to the story that drifts through Elderbridge. Within its pages are no rules, no instructions, no declarations. Instead, each entry speaks of a chair. A chair remembered, described, cherished. The handwriting shifts across the pages, sometimes neat, sometimes slanted, sometimes hurried, but always tender. These are not technical notes. They are impressions. The way the arms of a chair curved just so. The way a cushion held warmth hours after someone rose. The sound the legs made when dragged across a pine floor in summer. No one knows who first began writing in the ledger. Some say it was a traveling carpenter who moved from village to village, carving chairs not from blueprints but from dreams. Others believe it began as a journal of a collector who simply could not help but record every chair that touched them in some way. Whoever wrote it, others followed. The ledger became communal, passed gently from one hand to the next, kept not in secrecy, but in shared reverence. It's here that the tradition took root. Once each spring, when the buds on the elder trees began to swell, and the ground no longer held the chill of winter, the townsfolk would return to this hill. They would bring with them a chair, sometimes new, often old, and gather in the great oak hall below, not to compete, not to persuade, but to speak softly of a seat that once mattered, and to listen deeply as others did the same. No vote was ever taken, no best chair declared. It was not a debate in any modern sense. It was something older, gentler, a mutual wondering, shaped by time and softened by kindness. Now, as you sit within this space, listening to the wood groan softly, watching the dust swirl in the light, perhaps you, too, can sense the ledger's gentle gravity. It pulls no one. It demands nothing. But in its quiet presence, it reminds you that every chair once held someone. And sometimes, that's all the story needs to begin. In the loft above the quiet library, where dust hangs like golden silk in the soft light, the ledger rests once more on the table where it was first read aloud so many years ago. It is not large, but its presence is undeniable, like a hush that enters a room before a story begins. Bound in leather, the color of river stones, and lined with parchment that crinkles faintly as you turn each page, the ledger seems to carry the weight of gentle time. Its ribbon, once green, has faded to a grayish mint, the fibers fraying softly at the edges. Untying it feels like opening a memory, something fragile and familiar at once. The linen wrapper folds away like a whisper, revealing the cover worn smooth by countless hands. There is no title, no name on the spine, just the texture of time and quiet reverence. The first page is unlined, and at its center rests a single line in ink, so delicate it seems part of the paper itself. A record of rest, written in wood, and so it begins. The entries in the ledger are not orderly. There are no page numbers, no index to follow. Some paragraphs span a page. Others float in corners, tucked between sketches and musings. They read more like reflections than reports meditations on the way a chair feels an afternoon sun, or the way an armrest carries the memory of a hand that once lingered there. One page describes a stool in a gardener's shed, built from uneven scraps of elm. It creaks with honesty, the writer noted, and smells of mint and soil. Another page sketches a high-backed chair with a single missing spindle and a velvet cushion faded to rose gray. The note beneath reads simply, "Where I first learned to listen." The pages aren't written in a single hand. Over time, new script appears rounder, narrower, looser each writer, adding a layer of observation like rings in a tree. The tone is always quiet, always full of care. No entry boasts. No writer critiques. Each chair, whether finely carved or barely held together, is described with the same attention and warmth. Some pages include tiny illustrations, pencil outlines of backrests, woven seats, carved legs shaped like vines or leaves. The drawings are not precise, but they are full of feeling. They capture the essence of a chair more than its measurement. One sketch, nearly rubbed away, shows a chair left beneath a cherry tree, petals drifting onto the seat. Underneath, in script faint as breath, it reads, "It caught the bloom like it caught the breeze." The older entries are darker, their ink browned by time. They tend to speak of craft of joints fitted by hand, of the feel of oak shaved along the grain. One passage describes a day spent shaping a curved backrest from a fallen branch, pausing often to listen to the wood. It didn't want to be a shelf, the writer explains, but it was willing to be a place of rest. As you read on, something becomes clear. This ledger was never meant to catalog chairs in a technical sense. It was meant to preserve moments. the way someone leaned into the curve of a seat after walking a long distance, the weight of dusk settling over the arms of a rocker on a front porch, the creak of an old bench as two friends sat without speaking, sharing only the space between them. Here, the chair becomes something more than furniture. It becomes a pause, a silence, a vessel for presence. The ledger celebrates the presence without noise or demand, just the quiet invitation to rest. There is one particular entry, nearly at the center of the book, written in a hand both steady and fine. It begins with a small, centered title, A Chair for No One. The passage speaks of a chair crafted not for a king or guest, but simply to sit in the corner of a study and hold sunlight. It is enough, the writer notes, that it listens. No one ever sat in it, not out of neglect, but out of reverence. It was there not to be used, but to keep space. Such a thought feels tender, even now. At the bottom of that page is a small mark, perhaps a signature, though it is not a name. Just a curve, like a leaf caught in wind or the edge of a wave. It appears again in other places, scattered but deliberate. Perhaps the same hand, returning again and again. Perhaps a reminder that the same eyes may have seen many chairs, but each one differently, each one with fresh attention. The final pages of the ledger are softly worn, their parchment touched by time but not forgotten. Fewer entries fill these last sheets, and the handwriting shifts more recent, slightly neater, perhaps written by hands uncalloused by woodworking, but still reverent. These are the quiet notes of villagers who continue the gentle tradition, scribbled in darker ink and newer strokes. Yet the voice remains unchanged, calm, thoughtful, and full of affection for the quiet beauty of rest. One simple entry reads, My grandfather's chair creaks with every movement, and still I sit, just to hear it. Another says, I found this one in the loft above the bakery, covered in flour dust and years. When I sat, I remembered things I'd never lived. These reflections don't marvel at craftsmanship or speak of grand stories. Instead, they honor memory, presence, and the simple act of sitting still. These final words, delicate and slow, speak of a deep understanding of what it means to pause, to notice, and to care. Through them, the ledger continues to breathe, like the soft hush of turning pages in a room where nothing needs to hurry. Now it rests again in the loft of the library, open to no particular page. The ribbon lies loose beside it, the linen wrapper folded beneath. Sunlight slips through the window and lands gently across its pages, touching ink, lifting dust. Below, in the village, life continues in its unhurried rhythm. But here, above it all, in the quiet cradle of books and beams, the chairmaker's ledger waits for the next reader, the next whisper, the next moment worth writing down. Along a dim aisle in the upper wing of the Elderbridge library, where light filters through small, dust-flecked windows and shadows stretch gently across the stone floor, a quiet row of chairs stands waiting. They are not arranged like exhibits, nor guarded or labeled. Instead, they sit in the half-light, scattered with care, as if someone had once risen from them slowly, meaning to return. This wing is stiller than the others. Here, even the breeze hushes its breath. Each chair holds its own presence. Not loud, not grand, but assured. Their forms vary, some short, some tall, some arched in graceful curves, others plain and steady. Together, they form a quiet procession through time. A gentle walk, not of movement, but of memory and craft. The first chair we meet is tall-backed, fashioned from deep walnut, its frame carved with spirals that wrap around the arms and legs like the gentle swirl of wind in winter branches. Its surface is smooth with polish earned by years of touch. The seat has dipped slightly in the middle, shaped by countless moments of stillness. It gives off a feeling of thoughtfulness, as though someone once sat here in long meditation, hands resting gently in their lap, eyes half closed, listening to nothing but the room. Next to it, Tucked modestly beneath a side table is a small stool with 3 legs. Made of pale birch, its edges are softly rounded, and one leg leans slightly, as if shyly asking for forgiveness. There's a tenderness to its design, functional, but not rushed. It might have been used by someone shelling peas in the morning, or mending a hem in the fading evening light. You can almost see the bowl on the floor, the steam of a kettle nearby, the slow rhythm of quiet tasks. A little further down, a delicate chair with a caned seat and curved backrest leans at a comfortable angle. Its design is light, airy, almost musical in its proportion. The legs taper gently, ending in slender feet that barely touch the floor. It gives the impression of being once loved by someone who prized elegance in the everyday. Perhaps it stood beside a writing desk, where notes were penned slowly, or poems read aloud to no one but the room. Across from it, low and wide, is an upholstered armchair. The fabric, a faded blue velvet, has worn smooth over time. The cushions sag just slightly, enough to welcome rather than resist. The arms, though rounded and thick, seem to embrace rather than contain. There's a trace of lavender scent, buried deep within its seams, mingled with dust and memory. This is a chair that invited naps, daydreams, long hours of quiet watching. A cat might have made its home in the hollow near the back leg. A blanket might still lie folded, tucked into the corner, waiting. In the far corner, nearly hidden by a tall bookcase, stands a spindleback chair with a crooked stance. One leg is shorter than the rest, causing it to lean, but not fall. The paint is chipped, once a forest green, now softened to the color of moss. It seems like a kitchen chair one that knew the warmth of hearth, the scrape of bowls, and the comfort of quiet family meals. Though its design is humble, there's a steady dignity to it. It stood its place. It still does. Further along the corridor, a bench appears. Long, narrow, and worn smooth from use, its seat curves downward in the middle, as though cradling every figure that ever rested there. No back, no arms, just a place to pause. Perhaps this bench once sat in a hallway where boots were removed, or outside a garden door where muddy aprons were shaken out in spring. Its simplicity is not empty. It holds space, and in that space, peace. There is a chair with no particular ornament, plain slats, simple joinery, and a seat made of tightly woven rush. It has the look of something made by hand, by someone who didn't need flourishes, only purpose. And yet, when the light hits it just right, you see the care in every line. The joints are strong, the edges sanded with care. This chair may have once belonged to someone who spoke little, but saw everything. As we move quietly along, the air shifts just slightly. Dust dances more visibly in the late morning sun. Time here doesn't press or pull. It simply unfolds. Each of these chairs is a design. Yes, but more than that, they are a record of stillness, of patience, of the human desire to sit, to rest, to be held for a moment without demand. They are not merely artifacts of function, but vessels of pause. Each mark, each worn patch, each squeak in the wood tells a soft story, if we choose to listen. There is no competition among them. No single chair demands to be known as the best. They rest beside one another with quiet camaraderie, content in their roles, in the comfort they once gave and still offer. The beauty here is not in the perfection of form, but in the intimacy of use. Somewhere between them all, a sense of gratitude arises. Not dramatic, not loud, just a quiet appreciation for the craftsmen who shaped these forms from trees, for the people who sat without hurry, and for the space to notice. As we reach the end of the row, our steps grow slower, quieter, almost as if we are walking in rhythm with the chairs themselves. Outside, the world may continue its hurried pace, but within these still walls, time loosens its grip. The hush of the library deepens, and in it we find ourselves breathing a little softer, a little slower. These chairs, each with its own story shaped by time and use, stay with us not in vivid detail, but in the feeling they offered: calm care and quiet belonging. They remind us that there is no need to rush, that stillness is not an absence, but a presence of its own. With that gentle understanding held close, we turn the corner of the corridor. Ahead, beneath the filtered light of a tall window, a quiet elm tree leans just beyond the glass, waiting with a whisper for our next slow step forward. Down a winding cobblestone path that curls softly from the library's rear gate, we find ourselves drawn toward the heart of Elderbridge, the quiet village square. Morning light filters through the mist like lace, delicate and pale, and ahead, rising in gentle elegance, is the ancient elm. Its broad canopy seems to cradle the air itself, a hushed dome of green above stone and memory. The sound of your own footsteps, soft against the worn stones, becomes part of the hush, absorbed by a place long practiced in stillness. The tree has stood for centuries, its roots tucked deep into the earth beneath the square, anchoring it through countless seasons and silent years. Branches arch outward like slow, deliberate gestures of welcome. Some curve low enough to brush your shoulder as you pass, while others stretch high into the sky, catching the light in leaves that shift like tiny boats on a calm sea of air. Beneath it sits a ring of stone benches, worn smooth by time, and visitors who came not to speak, but to listen. The elm does not rustle loudly, even in the wind. Its leaves whisper in a language all their own, soft, rhythmic, more like remembering than speaking. Here, in this clearing of dappled light and layered silence, tales once drifted through the air like smoke from a fire long since faded. In the earliest days of Elderbridge, before the ink of history had dried on parchment, villagers would gather beneath the elm, not to argue or prove points, but to reflect, to share. These were not debates in the way we think of them. They were gentle musings, voiced without urgency. Thoughts passed from one to another, like warm bread at a quiet table. Some spoke of chairs they had known, the curve of a backrest that held them after a long day in the fields. Others described a stool, low to the ground, that once sat in a baker's kitchen, brushed daily by flour and early sun. One might recall a rocking chair whose motion kept pace with the ticking of an old clock, the same way waves follow the moon. These weren't competitions. They were offerings, each recollection placed carefully into the air, where it hovered a while, then faded, leaving behind not argument, but presence. The stone benches bear the imprint of those many days. Lichen and moss trail gently across their surfaces like soft calligraphy, tracing the lines of years long gone. Tiny wildflowers bloom in the cracks, their roots cradled by stone, their faces turned toward the filtered light. No one ever documented what was said beneath the elm, yet the tree remembers. Its bark is furrowed like ancient parchment, every ridge and groove a quiet echo of voices past. You can sit here now, if you wish. The stone may feel cool beneath you, but the air around is tender, and the elm offers more than shade. It offers pause, a space between thoughts, a soft place to land. Perhaps you close your eyes for a moment and picture those who once sat here, elders with cloaks wrapped close, children lying back to trace cloud shapes through branches, wanderers who stayed just long enough to feel grounded. This isn't a place where time presses forward. Here it stretches gently, breathes in and out. You may notice how your breath slows in response, how your shoulders ease without effort. The elm's stillness reaches into you, like sunlight through glass, soft and unhurried, and in this stillness small details emerge. The sound of leaves brushing one another high above. The way a beam of light seems to hang in the air, catching on dust like glitter in water. The faint fragrance of earth and bark, mixed with the ghost of distant blossoms. It's as if your senses have widened, not to do more, but to feel more deeply. Even now, someone occasionally finds their way here. A person with a basket and nowhere particular to go. A reader with a book unopened, because the quiet is more inviting. A thinker with nothing urgent to solve. They sit, they stay, and they leave not changed, exactly, but softened. The tree watches always, and keeps the rhythm. Your breath, its branches, the air between. There is something sacred in this shared quiet. A kind of understanding that doesn't ask for words. It asks only for presence. For you to be still long enough to listen, not just to the tree, but to yourself. Beneath the elm, silence is not the absence of sound, but the fullness of attention. It is what remains when nothing else is required. The chairs once spoken of here were remembered not for ornament or rarity, but for how they made someone feel. For the way they said, without speaking, "You are safe here." Perhaps that is the truest gift of any chair, not the design, not the story behind it, but the simple invitation to pause. And so, when the time comes to rise, you may find that you do so slowly not from fatigue, but from reluctance to leave this small, suspended moment. You carry with you a feeling, a hush, a quiet presence that lingers even as your steps lead you onward. The path ahead curves with quiet grace, its cobblestones worn smooth by countless careful footsteps. Time has softened their edges, and ivy spills gently across the borders, climbing low stone walls that offer no boundary, only guidance. As you follow the curve, a narrow archway appears, draped in vines, its opening bathed in a warm, golden glow. Just beyond, nestled in a hush of calm, waits a small tea room, lit by the soft flicker of lanterns. The amber light spills outward like a memory, drawing you nearer without urgency. Inside that glow, 4 chairs wait not arranged in symmetry, but in comfort. Each chair is different in shape and story, yet all seem to lean inward slightly, as if listening. They do not call out, nor do they insist. They simply are ready to welcome, to hold, to offer rest in their own quiet way. But you are not there just yet. The elm's presence still lingers behind you, a soft whisper in the leaves. You walk slowly, without needing to reach the destination quickly. The world is unhurried, and for now, so are you. The tea room sits at the corner where the ivy-covered path ends, folded gently into the side of the cobbled street, like a secret too soft to announce. Its windows are small and square, their glass a little wavy with age, and inside glows a light that never flickers too bright. There is no sign above the door, no painted name to claim it. People simply know it's there, and that seems to be enough. The door, when opened, sings a quiet creak, one that fades as quickly as it came, like the end of a long sigh. Inside, the air is warm and scented with something faintly floral, perhaps dried lavender or rose hips, or maybe it has just the smell of time passed gently and well. There is no bustle here, no hurried clatter of dishes or voices rising in excitement. Only the soft hush of steam rising from porcelain, the low murmur of pages turning, and the occasional hush of a breeze slipping through an open window. At the center of the room is a round wooden table, its surface slightly uneven with age, but lovingly polished. Around it sit 4 chairs. They do not match. They are not meant to. And yet, they belong together in the most natural way. Each one holds its own character, as if it had walked its own long road before arriving here to rest beside the others. The first chair is tall-backed and slender, carved from a dark walnut wood with delicate patterns etched into its spindles. It seems to sit with perfect posture, its presence dignified but not proud. One can imagine an artist choosing this chair, someone who sees detail in everything, who finds stillness in form. Beside it is the second chair, lower to the ground, its frame wide and gently curved. The arms are smooth from use, the cushion worn just so. This is the chair that welcomes you without condition, the kind a grandparent might favor, with a blanket folded across its back, and the memory of many hands resting on its arms. It asks nothing of the person who sits, and in return It gives a sense of having always been there. The third chair is more whimsical. It leans slightly to one side, not in an unstable way, but as though it's always been curious about the world. Its legs are uneven in shape, not by damage, but by design. The wood is lighter, perhaps maple or ash, and someone, at some point, stitched a little flower into the corner of its cushion. There's a sense that whoever made this chair once smiled while they worked. And then the fourth. This one sits just a little apart from the others, not in isolation, but like someone watching a quiet conversation. It is the simplest of the four, made of plain oak, with a flat back and a clean, honest structure. But it has something the others donned, a faint groove along the top rail where countless fingers must have rested, perhaps while thinking, perhaps while waiting. It is the chair of the observer, the thinker, the one who speaks last. In this tea room, no chair is better than another. No one is chosen more often. They are simply taken in turn by the rhythm of whoever walks through the door. One person might sit in the tall-backed chair and find themselves sitting straighter, breathing more deeply. Another might sink into the low-curved one and feel the weight of the day melt away. Each seat offers something different, something quiet, and each one listens. The tea served here is never rushed. The pot is brought out slowly, the lid lifted with care. A porcelain cup is placed gently by your side, and the liquid inside always seems to be the perfect temperature, never too hot, never gone cold too soon. You are not asked what you would like. Somehow, the tea is always just right. Not because it is special, but because here, everything slows to meet you. From the corner of the room, a small fire glows in a low stone hearth, more embers than flame, its heat gentle and steady. A cat sometimes sleeps nearby, its presence more implied than seen, perhaps only the faintest shifting of fur in the shadows. No one talks loudly here. In fact, very little is said at all. People read, people breathe, people sip their tea slowly, as if they've remembered something they almost forgot. That time can be kind when we let it be. Above the table hangs a lantern, its light dappled with the shadows of the iron frame that holds it. The flame inside wavers gently, and in its flicker, the chairs seem to move ever so slightly, not in reality, but in memory, each one carrying a different guest, a different story. None of them famous, none of them hurried. Just people who came in from the world outside and allowed themselves a moment to be still. Perhaps someone sat in the curious chair after a long walk, their coat still damp from mist. Perhaps someone else curled into the wide chair after letting go of a heavy day. The tall chair may have held someone lost in thought, pencil moving slowly across a page. And the simplest chair might have offered its back to someone who said nothing at all, just listened. And now, perhaps it is your turn. Maybe you selected the chair intentionally, or maybe it quietly welcomed you without needing to ask. Either way, you sit. The cup in your hands is warm, the porcelain smooth, and the tea inside carries a gentle breath of steam that rises slowly. Outside, leaves stir in the soft wind, brushing against the window with a whisper. Somewhere behind you, the great elm still stands, its presence lingering like memory. You do not need to speak. You do not need to move. This moment asks nothing of you. Here, in the warmth of the tea room, you are simply allowed to be. The chairs, the fire, the light, they hold you without expectation. The lantern overhead glows more golden as the day softens into something quieter. You are invited to stay, just a little longer. No one will rush you. When you rise, it will be in your own time. And just beyond the door, candlelight shimmers down a wooden hall, another still place, quietly waiting. Shall we go? We step softly into the long hall, leaving the warm amber hush of the tea room behind. The door closes without a sound, and ahead of us stretches a corridor lined with quiet light. Tall candles sit in alcoves along the paneled walls, their flames steady, casting elongated shadows that waver slowly, like sighs exhaled by the wood itself. The floor beneath our feet is old timber, gently worn, yet strong. Each board creaks, not with complaint, but as if sharing a secret of everyone who's walked this path before. There's a rhythm to it, a slow, deliberate beat that encourages smaller steps and deeper breaths. This is not a hall meant to be hurried through. It invites wandering. It welcomes pausing. Along the walls between the candles are small nooks, each holding an object or a chair, placed as though waiting to be noticed. The first holds a small writing desk, above which hangs a faded map of Elderbridge from long ago. The lines are soft now, blurred with age, and the village looks almost like a storybook version of itself. Rivers curved more gently, hills slightly rounder. There's no sense of precision here, just the memory of a place still gently becoming. Itself, dot in front of the map, sits a spindle-backed chair. Its surface is pale, sun-bleached in places, as though it had once been positioned in a bright window where afternoons lingered. The back slats are slightly bowed, not from misuse, but from long patience. You can almost see someone sitting here with a feather pen, head tilted in thought, glancing now and then out the window at nothing in particular. A few steps farther, and another nook comes into view. This one holds a small shelf of books. There, spines faded, their pages slightly curled at the edges. There is no need for titles here. Each book seems to hum quietly, with a kind of familiarity, stories you feel you've read before, or perhaps dreamed. In front of the shelf sits a round-bottomed chair with short arms. It seems made for leaning back, just enough to lose track of time. A woven throw is draped over one side, as if someone had only just left. We move on. The hall curves gently, a soft S-shape that keeps you from seeing too far ahead. It's a kind of invitation to discover the space not all at once, but slowly, patiently. You walk by a series of windows framed in thick oak. The glass is rippled and old, and through it, the outer world looks dreamlike, trees swaying slightly in slow motion. Rooftops softened by mist. At one window, a chair faces outward. This one is high-backed with rounded wings, a sort often found in quiet reading rooms. A cushion, slightly indented, rests where countless people must have sat just to look. Not to judge or analyze, just to gaze. Maybe they counted crows on the rooftop, or watched the clouds trade places with the sky. Farther down, a large mirror rests against the wall, tall, arched, its frame carved with leaf patterns worn smooth by time. You catch your reflection, but it's softened, not harsh or sudden. In this dim light, you look like a version of yourself who has slept well, who carries no lists, no clocks. For a moment, it feels like looking at a memory you didn't know you missed. The next chair waits, quietly across from the mirror. It's the smallest of them so far, almost a child's chair, though not quite. Its legs are delicate, and someone long ago painted small flowers along its edge. They've faded now, just pale echoes of pink and blue, but the care remains. A single cushion rests on the seat, hand-stitched, its corners gently frayed. Might sit here just for a moment, not because you're tired, but because the chair seems to ask you to. And as you do, you notice how the hall holds its breath around you. The wood still creaks in the distance. The candles flicker, but nearby, everything feels still. Time narrows to the space between one breath and the next. Perhaps you remember something some moment long ago where the world felt this slow. A porch in summer, a snowfall in early morning, the feeling of being read to when you were young. It's not a memory you can place exactly, but the feeling is there, warm, complete, whole. Eventually, you rise again. Not abruptly, but as if lifting gently out of a dream. The chair makes no sound, only offers a slight shift as you leave. Behind you, The mirror catches one last glimpse. Before it returns to watching the candles dot, we walk onward, still wrapped. In the long hush of this space, the hall narrows briefly, then opens once more, revealing a larger alcove. Here, several chairs circle a small table. A bowl sits in the center, filled not with fruit or flowers, but small folded paper's notes, left behind, perhaps, by those who came before us. No names, no explanations. Just words, waiting. You draw close and unfold one. The handwriting is careful, looping. It says, "Sometimes I sit just to remember how it feels to not rush." Another reads, "This chair reminded me of my mother's." Lullaby. A third, "The world outside is fast." Here, I slowed enough to hear myself. These are not messages for anyone in particular, and yet they feel meant for us. You place the notes gently back in the bowl. There is no need to take them. Their warmth stays with you anyway. As we reach the far end of the hall, the floor slopes downward slightly. Ahead, a heavy curtain hangs thick velvet, the color of twilight. It doesn't part dramatically. It simply sways slightly, as if moved by a hidden breath. Beyond it lies a softly lit chamber, low-ceilinged, filled with the scent of old wood, and something faintly sweet, like dried apples. But we won't go there just yet. We pause here, at the edge of one space and the start of another. The candles behind us flicker one more time, sending soft glimmers along the walls. And in this stillness, this last lingering hush of the long hall, we let the echoes settle. No hurry, no noise, only the sense of having walked gently through. Time. Another space awaits, another chair perhaps. When you're ready. Beyond the velvet curtain, we step into a room low-ceilinged and lined in old pine. The wood is golden in places, silvered in others, its knots and grains carrying the quiet of decades, if not centuries. The scent here is familiar and faintly sweet, something like dried apples or beeswax left in a warm cupboard. The space is lit not with lanterns, but with a series of old glass oil lamps, their flames small and steady, each one floating in a dome of reflected amber. There's little furniture here. Just a workbench near one wall, a short cabinet full of tiny drawers, and against the far corner, an armchair. At first glance, it seems ordinary. But as you approach, its details begin to emerge like slow music. The chair is upholstered in a deep moss-green velvet, slightly worn at the arms, as though someone had often rested their elbows there in thought. A brass-studded trim wraps around the curves of its frame, catching the lamplight in soft gleams. The legs are short and sturdy, their shape somewhere between practical and poetic, like the base of an old grandfather clock, and resting atop. One arm is a folded cloth, carefully embroidered with constellations. This was the chair of the village watchmaker. They say he lived alone, but was never lonely. His days were quiet, marked by the soft ticks of clocks and the gentle scratch of a pen against parchment. Each morning he would wind every timepiece in his home, never in haste, always in rhythm. And when the house was still, he would sit in this chair, cup of black tea nearby, watching the hour pass in silence. His workbench remains, mostly untouched. A magnifying glass on a bendable arm, a tray of tiny screws and gears, and a velvet-lined case of tools so fine they seem crafted for bird bones rather than machines. A journal lies open, its final entry written in script small and round. I fix the chiming on the west-facing clock. It now rings with the gentleness I always hoped it would. There's a stillness in the room that's different from the rest of the house. It's not simply quiet, it's measured, as if time itself slows to match the pace of the one who once sat here. The armchair, worn but dignified, feels like a vessel of that patience, a place where one didn't sit to pass time, but to hold it softly in their hands. You may sit if you wish. The cushion welcomes you with a slow sigh. The air is cool, but not cold. One of the oil lamps sits close enough to cast a warm circle around you, highlighting the threads in the embroidered cloth. A pattern of stars stitched in gentle silver. If you look closely, the threads shimmer not from motion, but memory. You imagine the watchmaker here in the early hours, listening not to ticking clocks, but to the hush between them. Perhaps he counted these silences like others, count seconds not to measure, but to notice, to appreciate the small spaces where time breathes. The cabinet of drawers is tempting, each one labeled in faded ink, moon hands, bell pins, crown wheels. You open one slowly. Inside, nestled like seeds in velvet, are a dozen tiny hands for pocket watches, each one shaped slightly differently, tapered, feathered, teardrop. They are impossibly delicate. You close the drawer with reverence, the sound no louder than a page turning. On the wall above the workbench, a set of blueprints is pinned beneath glass. Diagrams of a large clock tower that was never built. The notes in the margins read more like poetry than mechanics. If the wind sings at dawn, tune the chimes to E, and let the minute hand linger at noon for those who eat alone. It becomes clear, as you sit a little longer, that the watchmaker was not merely a craftsman of gears and hands, but something gentler, something more sacred. He was a caretaker not of clocks alone, but of the spaces between them. A quiet steward of moments. His chair, unadorned and soft-spoken, was never just furniture. It was his compass, his anchor, his window into the rhythm of Elderbridge. From this armchair, time didn't just pass, it flowed, carefully tended like water guided by hands. Not rushed, not wasted, but noticed, honored. He shaped how time was felt, not by counting it, but by listening to it. The hush between chimes, the sigh of a breath, the warmth of morning light against the wall. These were his hours, and perhaps that's what settles into you now. Not nostalgia, not exactly, but presence. A sensation as if you, too, are being held by something beyond the room. This chair holds memory, yes, but more than that, it invites you to slow down until you match the rhythm it remembers. The rhythm of someone who truly knew how to wait. There is no ticking here now. The clocks have long since stilled. And yet there is a sound, a kind of silence that isn't empty. It hums with quiet warmth. The oil lamps glow gently, casting soft amber reflections that tremble ever so slightly on the floorboards. You breathe in, and the air is laced with dust, pine, and the faintest memory of tea. Eventually, because even stillness must make way for the next moment, you rise. But it is not rushed. The chair does not press you forward, nor does it cling. It releases you the way dusk fades into night, naturally, quietly. It will wait again, just as it always has. You step out with quiet footsteps, the floor creaking beneath you like a gentle sigh. The corridor ahead is dimmer now, wrapped in calm, as if the house itself is settling into sleep. At the far end, a staircase curves downward, touched by a faint golden light, soft as candlelight through gauze. It flickers, inviting but unhurried. Something waits below. Not urgent, not loud. Just another quiet space, another page turning. In this hushed story, you pause for a moment at the top, listening. Then, with a breath as light as dusk, you begin to descend toward whatever silence might speak next. The hallway behind us narrows, its wooden beams faded and time-worn, until at last it opens into a small alcove flooded with the softest kind of afternoon light. The air is warmer here, scented faintly with lavender and old dust, as though sun and silence have spent years collecting in this room. There's little furniture to speak of, just a small bookshelf with a few yellowed papers, a side table with a faded doily, and facing the tall, arched window, a simple rocking chair. The chair is neither grand nor delicate. Its spindles curve modestly, and the seat bears the familiar hollow of many years of gentle use. Its paint, once perhaps a deep forest green, is now a softened hue, weathered by countless days of sun pouring in through the window. The wood creaks as if it breathes, and in its breath is a rhythm slower than speech, slower than thought. A rhythm of remembering. Beyond the window, golden fields stretch into the distance, their grasses undulating in the breeze like the calm breathing of a great slumbering creature. The wind is steady, not sharp, and each gust makes the chair stir, ever so slightly, as though responding to a call from the world outside. It rocks, slow and sure, like the nod of someone who has heard the same story many times, and still loves it just as much. No one remembers who first made this chair. There are no initials carved into its frame, no record in any ledger, no tale passed down about the carpenter. But the chair itself tells a quiet story, not of its creation, but of its presence. The way it continues to rock, even when the room is empty, even when no one is there to push. Some say the rocking comes from the breeze. Others believe it's the echo of someone who once sat there so often, so peacefully, that the chair learned the motion and kept it going long after. Whatever. The truth, the movement is soft, almost imperceptible, gentle enough to lull thought into quiet. You could sit and watch it for hours, or let it cradle you and feel the minutes blur, the edges of time gently fade. And when you do sit, the chair greets you not with sound, but with presence. It adjusts subtly, not in a mechanical way, but in a way that feels instinctive, almost tender. It doesn't hurry you. It waits. Slowly, your back eases into the curve. Your breath deepens. Your shoulders soften. The world outside narrows to the hush of the room and the sway beneath you. Through the open window, a bird glides by, its wings casting a fleeting shadow on the worn floor. For a moment, you don't think of anything at all. You simply are. And the chair, faithful and patient, holds you as if it's always known how. You don't need to speak here. You don't even need to think. The room makes no demands of you. In the company of the rocking chair, you're offered the rarest kind of moment, one in which nothing is expected and everything is allowed. Even the ticking of time seems to soften. Perhaps someone once sat here every afternoon, knitting in the slanting sun, or reading aloud to no one in particular, or just watching the field change color with the seasons. The chair does not remember these details. It remembers the feeling, the calm, the weight of presence. As you rock slowly back and forth, the floor creaks in soft sympathy beneath you. The boards here have held many such moments. They don't record them in ink, but in grain and tone and warmth. This is not a place of events. It's a place of states of being, of noticing. The afternoon deepens outside. Shadows lengthen across the field. A breeze curls in through the open window, stirring the lace curtain just enough to make it dance, lazily. The room brightens not with intensity, but with glow. The chair continues its soft motion, unchanged by the changing light. Perhaps if you close your eyes, you can feel the stories that never needed to be told aloud. The quiet companionship of those who have sat here before you. The unspoken understanding shared between sitter and seat that it's okay to stop, okay to let go of the next thing and the next. You don't drift to sleep, exactly. You drift to stillness, to a moment that doesn't move forward or back. And if your thoughts do wander, they do so gently, like the wind across the field. There is no ending to this moment, no sudden realization, just quiet, just being. Eventually, you may rise, not because the moment is over or the stillness has faded, but because something gentle beyond the room begins to call. You stand slowly. The chair rocks behind you, not abruptly, not like a goodbye, but like a breath being released. One final arc, One last creak, then stillness again. Not empty, but full of memory. At ease. From the doorway, you glance back. The chair still moves, just slightly. It's not waving farewell. It's continuing a quiet rhythm you've joined. For a little while, and now leave in motion. It does not need you to stay, though it welcomed you deeply. Some part of you will always remain there, cradled in the hush and sway. The corridor beyond is touched now with the gold of late afternoon. The air has changed warmer, softer, holding the scent of wood smoke and something familiar. Around the bend, a new doorway waits. Another space, another chair. But before you move, pause one more time. Let the image settle, the slow, deliberate motion of the rocking chair still echoing your presence. There's something in that movement, something alive. A memory being kept. A rhythm that continues, even as you step away. This, too, is part of the journey. Learning how to leave gently. How to carry the quiet with you. And so you do, not rushing, not reluctant. Just forward. Toward the glow of firelight, and a simple chair turned toward warmth and welcome. The room is simple, but it welcomes. A small space, tucked into a quiet wing of the house, just wide enough for a hearth and the glow it casts. Floorboards creak with age, softened by woven rugs faded by years of morning sun. Walls hold shelves, of book spines crooked, some titles barely legible, while the windows are dressed with curtains that never quite close, always letting in just a sliver of daylight or dusk. And then there is the chair. It sits alone, angled gently toward the hearth, not so close that the fire overwhelms, but near enough that warmth finds its way to the fabric and settles in. The chair is not grand, no scrollwork, no polish. Its frame's wooden, worn to a softness by use. The fabric is a dusky green, faded into something between sage and smoke. If you were to run your hand across it, you might feel not the texture of cloth, but the stories held in its threads. This is the chair that faces the fireplace. Someone placed it here long ago, and no one ever felt the need to move it. It belongs to the hearth, the way shadows belong to candlelight. In this place, sitting is not just rest, it is ritual. You ease into the chair with the same reverence one might have folding into a beloved memory. The cushion doesn't resist. It exhales slightly beneath your weight, as though saying, yes, you've returned. A fire has recently been lit. Its crackles are gentle, not demanding attention, but offering it. The scent of pine wood drifts up slowly, sweetened with the faint sharpness of dried rosemary branches tucked into the log pile. You inhale, and time feels like something slow-moving, syrupy, and golden. The kind of time that doesn't pass, but lingers. Nearby, a side table holds a book. Its pages are softened with wear, corners folded delicately by readers who never intended to forget their place. It's a book not necessarily meant to be read from cover to cover, but opened randomly and absorbed. Perhaps today it offers a chapter on garden mosses, or a story about the making of ink in the old world. It does not matter. In this chair, with this fire, every word feels softer dots sometimes. Without realizing it, you hold the book in your lap and never open it. Your eyes trace the firelight instead, flickering across the stone of the hearth, watching how the flames rise with care, never in a hurry, never the same shape twice. It is a dance you've seen before and will see again, but it never loses its comfort. This room smells like a memory of winter. Not the harsh cold or the heavy frost, but the quiet within it. The smell of wool blankets, of paper and ash, and the faint sweetness of whatever someone once baked nearby. You imagine distantly the sound of a kettle rising to a soft boil in another room, a mug placed gently on a tray. But here, no one brings anything. The comfort is already complete. The chair asks for nothing but your presence. Not your productivity, not your purpose, just your being. It faces the fire because that is enough. And in sitting, you remember that you are also enough. As the afternoon drifts into early evening, light softens. The fire grows more golden. Shadows deepen into corners, and the books on the shelves seem to sink deeper into their spines, as if nodding off. Your breath slows in response. Not sleep yet, but the edge of it, where thinking becomes drifting. You might shift once, adjusting the blanket draped over the armrest. It smells faintly of lavender, something left behind by a previous guest. Your fingers rest lightly on the book's spine. You do not need to open it. You do not need to move. Outside the window, the wind does not howl. It sighs. And every now and then, the fire responds with a soft crack, as if in conversation. At some point, you do pick up the book. You open to a page that feels right, not because you chose it, but because the chair and the moment guided your hand. The words read like quiet thoughts you've always known, but never heard aloud. You read slowly. You do not need to finish. When your eyes lift again, the fire has dwindled. Not out, but into embers, those soft, glowing coals that never demand, only offer. Their light bathes the room in an amber that feels almost like the past remembering itself. Eventually, you rise, not with reluctance, but with a kind of reverence, like standing from a prayer, or closing a book whose final page still lingers in your chest. The chair doesn't resist, nor does it urge you on. It simply releases you, leaving behind a warmth. That isn't just from the fire, but from the quiet you shared. You carry it with you, not the chair itself, but the feeling. The way the flames whispered. The way your breath matched the rhythm of a room that had no demands, only presence. You carry the stillness, the gentleness, the silence that somehow spoke to every part of you that longed for rest. You don't look back as you cross the threshold, not because you're done, but because you know it will remain faithful, unmoved, awaiting the next person who needs to pause, breathe, and remember themselves. Just beyond the door, the hallway softens into shadow. The light changes cooler, dimmer, touched with twilight. And in the air, a faint scent of lavender brushes past you. Delicate and unmistakable. It draws you towards something quieter still, not the warmth of firelight, but the openness of sky. Not the gentle crackle of burning wood, but the soft rustle of leaves and the hush of growing things. Oaks rise ahead, their branches whispering above a path lined with pale purple blooms. Lavender sways in the breeze, releasing a scent that calms more deeply than words ever could. The air here feels broader, lighter, like an exhale held too long. A transition, not an ending. And though the fire is behind you, its warmth remains carried in your chest, in your step, in the pause. Before moving on, the path waits, quiet but sure. Shall we see where it goes? Past the creaking hallway, and beneath a low wooden lintel, there lies a small door that opens not into another room, but into a garden. The change is subtle at first, a hint of wind through the stone corridor, a fluttering scent that speaks of something softer, something growing. Then, as the latch clicks and the door swings outward, you find yourself stepping gently into a space held by air and sky. The garden is not grand. It does not boast rows of cultivated roses or meticulously sculpted hedges. Instead, it breathes gently with wild lavender. Soft mounds of pale purple stretch across the space like a dream remembered halfway. The plants sway even when there is no wind, as though moved by their own rhythm, a pulse slower than yours, but steady, sure, serene. In the center, as if placed by the garden itself, stands a single wrought iron chair. Curved lines form its back, coiled like vines. The seat is cold at first, touched by morning dew and shadow, but it warms quickly under you. It is not padded or plush, and yet it holds you with the ease of something that has always been meant for waiting, This is not a place for conversation. The lavender has long claimed it as a sanctuary of silence. Even the bees that drift lazily between blossoms move with a kind of reverence, their wings a low hum that fades into the breeze. Occasionally, a bird may call from a distant branch, but the sound arrives softened, blurred by layers of scent and space. To sit here is not to pass time, but to let it pass through you. The air smells of sun-warmed earth and flowers, the kind of smell that lingers on skin and clothes, following you long after you leave. It wraps around your breath, slows your thoughts, blurs the edges of urgency. The mind, once full of lists and echoes, begins to hush. Not by force, but by invitation. You may notice how your posture changes here. There's no need to sit straight or prepare for anything. The chair doesn't ask that of you. It welcomes slouching shoulders and drifting eyes. It encourages the kind of attention that doesn't look for answers. Some say the chair was placed here long ago by someone who had nowhere else to go. Others think it simply appeared one morning, drawn into being by the lavender itself. But no one truly knows. And perhaps that not knowing is part of its power. There are no signs, no paths marked out. The garden grows as it will, and the chair remains where it always has been, open to those who find it, not because they searched, but because they paused. You watch the bees. You follow a petal falling. You breathe. The hours here do not measure in clocks. They pass in light, in shadow, in the slow turning of blossoms toward the sun. Sometimes the air shifts and a cooler breeze drifts through, sending waves across the lavender field like ripples on water. The chair rocks ever so slightly, even though it's fixed in place. At some point, without announcement, without effort, your hands have softened in your lap. The grip you didn't know you held is gone. Your shoulders, once drawn tight with the shape of the morning, have let go. You sit differently now, not collapsed, not slouched, just present, grounded, aware of your own weight, not as a burden, but as proof that you are here. The garden offers no conversation, but it listens more attentively than most people ever could. Its silence is not empty. It is full of presence. And in that quiet attention, something begins to loosen within you, a thought you'd held too tightly, a tension you couldn't quite name until it started to slip away. These things do not vanish entirely, but they step back. They stop crowding. You dot as the afternoon deepens. The color of the lavender changes. No longer bright, it becomes dusky, shaded with hints of blue and silver. The shadows lengthen across the stone path and through the clusters of swaying blooms, but there is nothing sharp in their arrival. They stretch gently, like arms after rest. Everything in this garden seems to move that way, unhurried, unforced, following a rhythm older than clocks. And the chair? It doesn't change. It remains steady and still, holding space as it has always done. It asks nothing of you. It only welcomes, only waits. You glance at it one last time and find it exactly as it was, yet it feels different now, simply because. You do. Perhaps you wonder how long you've been sitting? An hour? 2? But such questions fade before they fully form. The garden doesn't keep time. Neither do you, not here, not now. The sun has moved, yes, but your heart no longer races to match its pace. Eventually, and without rush, you rise. It isn't because time has run out. It's simply that something within you settled, and still now feels ready. You take in one last breath of the lavender-tinged air, rich with earth and calm. Your body feels different than it did before you sat. Not lighter, exactly, but less burdened, less entangled in the noise you carried in. There's no ceremony to the moment, no need for goodbye. The garden doesn't ask for one. It accepts your coming and your leaving with the same quiet grace. It doesn't try to keep you. It only holds space for whatever you needed, and now, whatever you leave behind, you turn toward the path. Though no signs guide you, you feel no uncertainty. The steps come easily, familiar, as if this route was always waiting, and all you had to do was notice. Behind you, the chair remains empty, but still full. Of breath, of quiet, of the memory of stillness. And ahead, just past a gentle bend, there is a doorway. Its wood is weathered, soft to the eye, touched by time. Behind it, a golden glow pulses faintly like lamplight, or the warm hush of a fire. Left burning low. The garden stays with you, tucked into your sleeves, caught in your hair. Its lavender presence hums in the quiet of your breath. You do not hesitate. Another space awaits. Shall we step inside? Beyond the garden, where lavender lingers softly in your breath, a wooden door stands half open beneath an arched stone frame. The stone is worn at the edges, gently softened by time and weather, as though the air has been brushing past it for decades. There is something hushed about it, a kind of reverent quiet, as if the very air surrounding the doorway is holding its breath. You step through. Inside, the scent shifts. Wood and wax, parchment and a faint trace of something herbal-like. Dried mint or pressed chamomile. The warmth of polished timber embraces you, not with grandeur, but with familiarity, like the scent of an old book or a remembered touch. This is the study, not a vast library or a hall of scholarly prestige. This is something more personal. A single-room square, serene and deliberate. The light filters in from two low windows, golden and quiet, slanting across the floor like liquid pages. In one corner, a candle flickers on a sturdy desk, casting a pool of amber light across scattered papers. The room is filled with books. Some are shelved neatly, others gathered in soft, unsteady piles, as though mid-conversation. Their spines are faded from use, their edges curled and love. Near the back wall, a slightly tilted globe rests, its axis off kilter, continents worn pale by curious fingers. Dust motes float lazily through the beams of light, suspended like drifting punctuation in a long, unwritten thought. And in the center of the room, beneath the shadow of a tall bookcase, sits a stool. It is modest, not carved or ornate. A simple square of polished wood, its surface worn smooth by years of quiet service. It creaks not at all when you lower yourself onto it. It simply receives your presence, firm and silent, like a friend who has learned to listen well. This stool is not merely furniture. It holds memory. The scholar who once used it may be gone, but the presence of their attention remains. You feel it in the quiet way the room accepts you. In the open volume resting on the desk, marked halfway through a chapter on plant medicine. In the notebook left behind, ink trailing off at the end of a sentence not quite finished, as though the writer stood up mid-thought and never returned. Perhaps they left for tea, perhaps for a walk, perhaps for the end of a long, well-lived day. The stool faces the desk, the books, the soft glow of the candle. It does not perform. It invites. To sit here is not to study necessarily, but to bear witness, to learning, to silence, to the quiet hum of thought long past. You are not alone here, even though no one speaks. The silence holds a kind of companionship, like sitting beside someone absorbed in their own thinking. The candle flutters in its glass holder, a breath of flame dancing against the spine of a nearby atlas. And you notice how the room breathes. With you, the shadows shifting slightly with your inhale, the warmth settling deeper with your exhale. The wooden walls, the scent of dust and old ink, the muted weight of books all around. It's not just stillness. It's presence. Time here is not tracked by minutes or hours, but by the depth of a paragraph, by the margins annotated, by the number of times a certain page is returned to. Time passes in the curl of a comma, the reaching arc of a question mark. In the stillness between thoughts, the stool asks for nothing but attention, not performance, not perfection, just your willingness to sit, to notice, not even to learn, but simply to be near the act of learning. The slow, patient pursuit of care, of curiosity. You run a hand along the desk's edge. The wood is ridged where elbows have leaned, smoothed where quills once rested. There is a faint ink stain, like the ghost of an idea. You imagine the hand that wrote here, the mind that paused between thoughts, the tea that went cold, forgotten in favor of a compelling footnote. And you begin to wonder, not what you might read, but what you might leave. What open book would be yours? What passage would remain after you stood and walked away? What sentence would trail off, not as abandonment, but as invitation? There is no music in the room, no ticking clock loud enough to intrude, only the small sounds of quiet persistence, the soft shush of a page turning, the faint scrape of a chair leg, the breathing of the candle. It is enough. Perhaps the scholar came here every day not to find answers, but to rest in the presence of questions, to be reminded that knowledge is not a race, but a rhythm. You feel it now that curiosity is not hunger, but hospitality, a way of welcoming the unknown without needing to tame it. The candle burns lower. The light softens. The air cools ever so slightly. Still, there is no rush. This room exists outside of urgency, that you may stay, or you may rise. The stool does not ask either of you. It offers no pressure, only patience. When you finally stand, it gives nothing more than a quiet shift beneath your leaving, no sound, no protest. Just the gentle imprint of your presence, like the trace of warmth left in a folded blanket. Across the study, half lost in the shadows cast by tall cabinets and low candlelight, a narrow door waits. You hadn't noticed it before. It blends with the wood, almost part of the wall. But now it creaks slightly open, as if stirred by your decision. Beyond it, a dim hallway lined with narrow drawers, old filing cabinets, and labeled boxes. Brass tags catch the flicker of candlelight and reflect it back in small glimmers. The archive. You hesitate for a moment, not from fear or uncertainty, but a quiet pull to look back. The candle still flickers steadily. The open book remains as you left it, its page curled softly, as if still breathing in your absence. The stool does not move. It only waits, as it always has. Shall we step forward? The hallway narrows before widening once more, this time revealing not a garden nor a study, but something entirely its own, a room of soft echoes and warmer wood. The air shifts as you step forward, and with it, your breath. The ceiling arches, high above you like the inside of a lute turned on its side, curving gently as if tuned by the hands of time itself. The walls are draped in heavy curtains, the color of mulled wine, their folds deep and rich, drinking in the light instead of reflecting it. There is a hush here, not silence, but a sustained pause, like a note held just long enough to hush the world outside. This is the music room. No one plays now. No melodies float through the space. Yet it feels as if someone has only just stepped away. A violin case lies open on a table, its velvet interior shaped to cradle its absent instrument. A bow rests beside it, loose hairs slightly frayed, as though mid-phrase. The harpsichord nearby sits with its lid half raised, caught in thought. There are no modern devices here, no speakers, no chords, no recordings. The instruments themselves are the keepers of memory. And near the harpsichord, placed with clear intention, waits a velvet seat. It is not elaborate, not the kind of seat one would find in a concert hall or beneath the grandeur of chandeliers. It is small, almost humble, with dark walnut legs that curve inward slightly, and upholstery of faded crimson velvet. Its color echoes the curtains. The cushion bears the soft weight of years, molded gently by sitters who have come and gone. Musicians most likely, but perhaps also quiet listeners, or those who found comfort in watching hands move gracefully. Across keys, strings, frets, the seat does not demand. It does not even invite. It simply allows you sit, not for long, not for leisure. The seat was not built for sprawling or dreaming. It was made for presence, for the kind of attention that leans forward slightly, that hears not only the music, but the moments between as your body settles into its shape, something subtle shifts. Your back straightens. Your shoulders lower, not in exhaustion, but in readiness. Your breath slows. Even your thoughts seem to find their place, like notes falling into a line. From here, the room opens anew. You begin to see it differently. The grain of the floorboards glows in the low light. The shadows cast by the instruments seem less like voids and more like memory traces. And you can imagine, almost without trying, what once happened here. A prelude played for the 100th. Time, each note still uncertain. The quiet murmur of two voices discussing tempo. A soft laugh at a missed chord. The breathless stillness after the final note faded. You hear it in the silence, now at the absence of music. But its echo. The velvet seat hums with it. So does the harpsichord. Even the air has tuned itself to a softer register. Some say a teacher once taught music here every afternoon. That she was kind, but firm. That her students returned long after they stopped, needing lessons. Others whisper about a composer who refused to write anything down, who believed that melody should live in the space where it was born, passed only from one hand to another. There are no plaques, no photos on the wall, only the feeling that something was made here and loved. The velvet beneath you is warm, not from the sun, which rarely reaches this room, but from the memory of many others who have sat as you sit now. The chair does not feel old nor fragile. It feels lived in, trusted, like it understands what it means to hold someone in stillness and to ask nothing more than attention. You could stay here, listening to the nothing that sounds so much like something. Or perhaps, in a quieter way, you already are. A breeze stirs the curtains. The harpsichord creaks softly, as if shifting in its rest. The sound is barely there, but it is enough. For a moment, it feels as though the room might begin again, as though music is just beneath the surface, ready to rise. And perhaps it is, not as a performance, not even as sound, but as presence, as readiness, as the feeling of waiting without. Urgency. Eventually, you rise, gently. There's no abruptness in the movement, no stiff shift or creak of complaint from the velvet beneath you. The seat simply releases your weight with the same quiet grace it welcomed it. It doesn't resist your departure, nor does it hurry it. Instead, it acknowledges it in its own way, as if saying, yes, that feels right. You stand still for a moment, letting your body adjust to the room, once more not as a sitter, but as a visitor again. The harpsichord remains half open, frozen in the gesture of invitation. The bow lies just so, at ease beside its case. Dust dances in the filtered light, moving to a rhythm only this room can hear. And your eyes catch something you hadn't noticed before. A door, low and arched, nearly blending into the paneled wall near the back of the room. It's framed in dark wood, and its handle, simple, graceful, is shaped like a tuning fork. It feels like the sort of detail you wouldn't see until you were ready to as you near the small arched door. The atmosphere subtly shifts. The air grows cooler, the light softer. A sound meets your ears, delicate, almost imagined. The trickle of water, a distant splash, a murmur like laughter blurred by time and stone. You touch the handle, cool and smooth, and the door opens without resistance. A curved hallway stretches ahead, lit by golden sconces that flicker like quiet thoughts. The scent of damp stone lingers, mingling with something brighter fresh. Alive, you pause at the threshold and glance back. The music room rests unchanged, waiting. The harpsichord, the bow, the velvet seat all poised in quiet readiness, full of held breath and unfinished songs. And then forward, into something new, a gentler sound, a cooler space, a feeling you can't yet name. Shall we go and listen? Past the quiet hush of the archive, past the reading room's last echo and the still breath of the study, a tall window opens to a garden path edged with creeping time. The air here is different, brighter, cooler, carrying the faint trace of flowing water and the distant laughter of leaves. Stone steps lead you down into a courtyard, where time itself seems to loosen its grip. At the quiet center of the courtyard stands a fountain unassuming, humble in its design. There are no marble angels, no elaborate carvings, just a simple, round basin of weathered stone. Moss softens its edges, creeping gently as if time itself has leaned in close. From a single pipe in the center, water rises in a slow silver arc before falling back with a soft rhythmic murmur. It doesn't speak in words, but in sensations, in a cadence that resonates more in the body than the ear. Beside it, beneath the dappled shade of a wide old fig tree, rests a bench. It too is stone low and long, its back slightly curved in, a way that invites rather than insists. The arms are worn smooth, shaped by the years of hands that have paused there. Some tired, some thoughtful, some merely still. Traces of lichen thread their way along its legs like old letters written in a secret. Mossy script proof that the earth, too, is slow and affectionate. This bench does not announce itself. It does not glisten or stand tall. It simply is, waiting, without expectation, offering itself without demand. You sit, and the fountain continues to murmur. The fig leaves rustle. The stone holds your weight with quiet dignity. Nothing more is needed. And when you do, you find that the bench doesn't quite cradle you the way a padded chair might. It doesn't comfort through softness, but through honesty. It offers exactly what it is, a place to pause. A flat stone, warmed by the day's sun. A space to rest your body and your thoughts, without expectation. Here, you are part of the stillness. You become a new shape in the courtyard's gentle geometry. Tree, fountain, bench, and now you. The air smells faintly of wet stone lavender. From a nearby hedge, and something warm baking bread, perhaps, from the tea room just out of sight. Bees float past, lazy and unbothered. A dove coos from the roof's edge. The water sings on. There is no plaque on this bench. No name engraved to remember. No dedication in memory of. And yet, it has held more memory than any single inscription could carry. Lovers have sat here, knees barely touching. Elders have paused mid-walk to let their hearts slow. Children have clambered across it, eagling, pretending it was a ship or a throne. And always, the fountain has flowed beside them, its song unchanged. You let yourself lean back. The stone is cool against your spine, solid and patient. There is no urgency in this space, no conversation to maintain, no performance to uphold. You do not need to be wise here, or kind, or interesting. You only need to be . And as you sit, something inside you begins to match the rhythm of the fountain's voice. A thought rises, but does not insist. A memory appears, but does not ache. Time moves, but gently. And you remember, maybe, the last time you truly let yourself be still. This bench has heard everything grief whispered to the water, laughter that startled the birds into flight, arguments resolved in shared silence. But it holds none of it with heaviness. It lets go. As you are allowed to too, the fig leaves above shift slightly, casting new shadows on the stone path. The sun is lower now, and the light is honeyed, slanting in long golden shafts across the courtyard. A breeze stirs the ivy climbing the wall. Behind you, and for a moment, the sound of the water and the rustle of the leaves join in quiet harmony. You realize then that this place was not designed for spectacle. It was built for return. A place you might forget until you need it again. Until the world becomes too sharp, or too fast, or too loud. And then you remember the bench, the fountain, the quiet. Someone walks by in the distance, their step soft. On the garden path. They glance toward you, nod slightly, then continue. You feel no pressure to speak. Here, the gesture is enough. You close your eyes, just for a breath, or maybe longer. It doesn't matter, because this is a space that will continue whether you move or stay, whether you speak or remain silent, whether you visit often or only. Once eventually, you will rise. But not yet. For now, you remain seated by the fountain, held by the hush of falling water and the warmth of sunlit stone. The air is soft here, carrying the scent of moss and memory. You feel your heartbeat, unhurried. It matches the rhythm of the fountain, of the afternoon, of the moment itself. There is nothing pressing, nothing pulling. Just the quiet company of the bench beneath you, the steady music of water beside you, and a rare stillness within. You have asked no questions, and the garden has given no answers. And somehow, that feels just right. When you finally do stand, you do so slowly, almost reverently, not from urgency, but from readiness. The bench has done its work. It has held you, long enough for the noise to settle, long enough for you to remember something easy to forget, and it is okay to stop, to rest, to simply exist. You take one last look at the fountain, its waters rising and falling in an endless cycle. Behind it, the bench sits in dappled light, unchanged, unrushed dot, and then you turn. Back to the shaded path, where branches sway overhead, and the garden breathes on without you. The bench does not call after you. It does not cling. It waits, quietly, for whoever might come next, not seeking wisdom, but space. Not needing direction, only stillness. A place to be. Shall we walk on? Past the garden, beyond the music room and its lingering notes, a narrow staircase curves downward into a quieter, tucked-away wing of the house. The ceilings here slope with a kind of hush, as though the walls have drawn closer to listen. The air changes to less of lavender and candle wax, more of beeswax, wood shavings, and something faintly metallic, like wire warmed by flame. It's the scent of making, of hands at work. This is the lantern workshop. It's a long, low room lit by a scattering of warm bulbs suspended from the ceiling. Their light spills in soft, uneven circles, touching here and there along the floor, and walls like scattered memory. Each shadow flickers, long and slow, as though leaning into the corners. There's no music here, but the space hums anyway, with presence, with patience. Work tables line both walls, cluttered with tools and materials. Tiny pliers lie next to glass cutters and brass snips, all worn smooth at the handles. Brushes sit in old jars, their bristles stiff with dried color. There are coils of wire curled like sleeping snails, parchment rolls tucked under weights, globs of sealing wax, scraps of mica and silk, neatly labeled drawers with words like rosewood, vellum, hinges. Along one shelf rest completed, lanterns each one distinct. A round red one glows like a distant harvest moon. Another, shaped like a star, has blue glass etched with patterns that resemble frost. One resembles a small fish, its silk fins translucent, shimmering with color. They are more than objects. They are stories framed and fragile, made not just to light a space, but to hold something deeper. And in the center of it all, not at any grand table or station, sits a single wooden chair. It is low, square, slightly. forward-leaning. Burn marks speckle its arms, and there's a long gouge across the top rail. Dried wax clings to one leg. The wood is smooth in places, worn down in others. It isn't beautiful, but it is deeply familiar, like a shirt with sleeves rolled just so, like a tool that always fits your grip. It knows something of the hours spent here. You sit. There is no cushion, no ornament. The seat is firm, but it gives a little, shaped by years of backs and shoulders, of leaning in. It smells faintly of oil and smoke, and maybe, just maybe, of orange peel once kept in someone's pocket, long ago, for scent or luck. The chair doesn't embrace you, exactly, but it holds you. Like it understands what it means to stay in one place for a while. On the table before you, an unfinished lantern waits. Its delicate bamboo frame has already been shaped a loose sphere, airy and precise, its ribs ready to be clothed. A brush rests in a jar beside it, gold paint diluted just enough to catch the light without shouting. You imagine someone sitting just as you are now, dipping that brush, tracing the curve of silk, breath steady, movement slow. The workshop is filled with that memory. Not a scene frozen in time, but one still humming beneath the surface. Rhythm of hands making things not for acclaim, but for care. Every mark, every tool out of place, every speck of dust feels intentional somehow, as if the very air has learned to respect the act of creating. The chair doesn't ask you to produce anything. It doesn't ask at all. But there is a quiet invitation. In the tilt of its back, in the scattered materials, in the unlit lanterns that glow with something more than flame. You are welcome here, not as a guest, but as a continuation. You let your fingers brush the edge of the table. Wood meets skin with that familiar, grainy warmth. This isn't a space for performance. It's a space for presence, for the kind of slowness that asks nothing but your attention. Outside the windows, the sky deepens into dusk, but the lanterns on the shelf seem to glow of their own accord. Their inner flames remain unlit, yet they shine, perhaps with memory, perhaps with longing, perhaps with the soft echo of the hands that made them. You lift one carefully. A hexagonal lantern. Its glass panels tinted amber, veins of brass inlaid with a precision that feels like breath held and slowly released. It's heavier than it looks. It holds something more than light-like. It contains a moment suspended in time. You set it down again, gentler than before. Each lantern here has held something. A wish, a memory, a name whispered during its making. Some have lit paths during winter festivals. Some rested by bedsides. Others stayed right here, glowing only for the one who built them. Not every light needs an audience. Some simply need to be. You sit a little longer, not to work, not to figure anything out, just to be near the tools, the wood, the dust. You feel the chair steadying beneath you, not as command, but as comfort. It leans forward slightly, still listening. Eventually, you stand. Slowly, the chair creaks, not with complaint, but with recognition. It knows the work may not have begun today, but the pause was part of it too. The silence after a breath. The space before a first note dot. As you move toward the hallway, something catches your eye. On the far wall, pinned between two crooked nails, is a small sketch. It shows a lantern shaped like a bird in mid-flight, wings spread, hollow body shaped, to hold a small flame. Below it, in faded pencil, 3 words, for winter evenings. You don't know if that lantern was ever made. Maybe it wasn't meant to be, or maybe it's waiting for someone else. Someone who will come and sit and begin. You step into the corridor once more. The air holds a trace of smoke and brass and candle wax. Behind you, the workshop remains warm, still, and gently glowing. as if remembering what it means to be held. The hallway beyond the lantern workshop grows quieter still. Its stone floors are smoother here, gently worn by the passing of sols and time. The air cools. Dust gathers more densely in corners. Even the silence seems older, layered with years. At the end of the corridor stands a door taller than most, painted the color of parchment and edged with brass. The doorknob is slightly tarnished, but turns easily. It opens not with a creak, but with a hush-like pages turning in a deep library. You step into the archive room. It does not demand reverence, but it receives it anyway. The light here is pale and steady, coming from tall, narrow windows and several green glass lamps mounted along the walls. The ceilings are high, the walls lined with wooden shelves and dozens of cabinets fitted with tiny drawers, each one labeled in looping script folklore, cartography, astronomy, and stranger headings still. Unverified, unspoken, almost forgotten. This is not just a storage of knowledge, it is a memory held in wood and ink. Everything smells faintly of parchment, lavender oil, and old thread. Papers are bundled in twine. Books are tied shut with ribbon. The room is quiet, but not asleep. It feels like it's listening. Just inside the doorway, to the right of a row of flat files, sits a single chair. It is simple wooden, straight-backed, with a curved top rail and no arms. A worn cushion rests on its seat, covered in faded green velvet. One leg has been mended with a small iron bracket. It has no desk before it, no table, just itself and a wall of cabinets and a small window, just high enough to catch a sliver of daylight. It is a waiting chair. Not meant for long stays, but not uncomfortable either. Not designed for work or sleep or performance, just for pause. Someone once sat here to rest while the archivist retrieved a document from the back stacks. Someone once sat here to read the first line of a letter not meant for them. Someone once sat here for no reason at all, just to be near something old and orderly, something that felt like permanence in a world that often shifts too fast. You sit. The chair greets you not with embrace, but with presence. It holds you lightly, but securely, as if saying, yes, stay a moment. But only if you wish. The room hums quietly around you, the soft rustle of pages, the distant creak of a cabinet opening, a whisper of wind nudging the glass in its frame. There is no music here, but there is rhythm, the rhythm of hands filing, of drawers sliding open, of thoughts traced across paper in ink. You look around and realize this is a place of questions that have already been asked. Their answers, if any, are stored gently in the drawers and bundles, the brittle folders and worn covers. Someone cared enough to preserve them. Even if no one has asked in 100 years, there is comfort in that. The cushion beneath you is just soft enough. A bit uneven, but not in a way that distracts. It feels lived with. The chair has had company before many times. Some sat fidgeting with anticipation. Others slouched with quiet relief. It has borne joy and grief, boredom and wonder. It asks for nothing in return. A file cabinet beside you bears the label Collected Correspondence. You notice a drawer half open. Inside are letters, tied in bundles with thin string. Some envelopes are blank, others crowded with looping script, stamps faded to pale brown. You do not reach for them. Not yet. It is enough to know there that someone's voice is folded and kept in this room, waiting for someone else to unfold it and listen. And suddenly, you understand the purpose of the waiting chair. It is not only for resting while others do the work. It is a place to meet the moment before decision, the breath before inquiry, the hush before history reveals itself. It allows you to exist in between. There's a clock on the far wall, small, round, the kind you might miss if you weren't still enough to hear it. Its ticking is gentle, steady. Each second falls like a soft footstep across a well-worn bridge, as though time is crossing a threshold with care. You hadn't noticed it before. And yet, once you hear it, the whole room seems quieter for its presence. You lean back slightly in the chair. Outside the nearby window, the late afternoon light has begun to tilt, washing the air in warm gold. Dust motes drift lazily through the glow, like confetti from a celebration that ended long ago, but left behind its shimmer. The room catches the light just so on the grain of the table, the spine of a book, the rim of the teacup beside you, and in that brightness, something like memory stirs. Not a memory of anything specific, but of stillness itself, of simply being, and then you realize no one is coming. There is no archivist on their way, no call bell, no request placed, no appointment waits. You are here because you are here. And the chair allows that. It does not ask why, or for how long. In a world that so often values motion, achievement, productivity, this chair values presence. It values the quiet dignity of sitting without expectation. So you stay. Not long. Just long enough for your shoulders to ease, for the breath you didn't know you were holding to soften around the edges. Long enough for a question, not urgent or loud, but tender and patient, to rise in your chest and settle again. It doesn't need an answer. It only needed space. When you rise, the chair shifts slightly, not in protest, in acknowledgement. A gentle nod. Your hand traces the top of its worn rail, and then you walk back to the door. Your steps quieter now, more your own. The archive room stays exactly as it was, unmoved, unhurrying. The chair simple, mended, and unassuming remains in its place, waiting for whoever next might need it. Or for someone who knows, with quiet certainty, that sometimes to sit is enough. The hallway beyond the lantern workshop grows quieter still. Its stone floors are smoother here, gently worn by the passing of sols and time. The air cools. Dust gathers more densely in corners. Even the silence seems older, layered with years. At the end of the corridor stands a door taller than most, painted the color of parchment and edged with brass. The doorknob is slightly tarnished, but turns easily. It opens not with a creak, but with the hush-like pages turning in a deep library. You step into the archive room. It does not demand reverence, but it receives it anyway. The light here is pale and steady, coming from tall, narrow windows and several green glass lamps mounted along the walls. The ceilings are high, the walls lined with wooden shelves, and dozens of cabinets fitted with tiny drawers, each one labeled in looping script folklore, cartography, astronomy, and stranger headings still. Unverified, unspoken, almost forgotten. This is not just a storage of knowledge. It is a memory held in wood and ink. Everything smells faintly of parchment, lavender oil, and old thread. Papers are bundled in twine. Books are tied shut with ribbon. The room is quiet, but not asleep. It feels like it's listening. Just inside the doorway, to the right of a row of flat files, sits a single chair. It is simple wooden, straight-backed, with a curved top rail and no arms. A worn cushion rests on its seat, covered in faded green velvet. One leg has been mended with a small iron bracket. It has no desk before it, no table. Just itself and the wall of cabinets and a small window, just high enough to catch a sliver of daylight. It is a waiting chair. Not meant for long stays, but not uncomfortable either. Not designed for work or sleep or performance, just for pause. Someone once sat here to rest while the archivist retrieved a document from the back stacks. Someone once sat here to read the first line of a letter not meant for them. Someone once sat here for no reason at all, just to be near something old and orderly, something that felt like permanence in a world that often shifts too fast. You sit. The chair greets you not with embrace, but with presence. It holds you lightly, but securely, as if saying, yes, stay a moment. But only if you wish. The room hums quietly around you, the soft rustle of pages, the distant creak of a cabinet opening, a whisper of wind nudging the glass in its frame. There is no music here, but there is rhythm. The rhythm of hands filing, of drawers sliding open, of thoughts traced across paper and ink. You look around and realize this is a place of questions that have already been asked. Their answers, if any, are stored gently in the drawers and bundles, the brittle folders and worn covers. Someone cared enough to preserve them, even if no one has asked in 100 years. There is comfort in that the cushion beneath you is just soft enough. A bit uneven, but not in a way that distracts. It feels lived with. The chair has had company before many times. Some sat fidgeting with anticipation. Others slouched with quiet relief. It has borne joy and grief, boredom and wonder God it asks, for nothing in return. A file cabinet beside you bears the label Collected Correspondence. You notice a drawer half open. Inside are letters, tied in bundles with thin string. Some envelopes are blank, others crowded with looping script, stamps faded to pale brown. You do not reach for them. Not yet. It is enough to know that someone's voice is folded and kept in this room, waiting for someone else to unfold it and listen. And suddenly you understand the purpose of the waiting chair. It is not only for resting while others do the work. It is a place to meet the moment before decision, the breath before inquiry, the hush before history reveals itself. It allows you to exist in between. There's a clock on the far wall, small, round, the kind you might miss if you weren't still enough to hear it. Its ticking is gentle, steady. Each second falls like a soft footstep across a well-worn bridge, as though time is crossing a threshold with care. You hadn't noticed it before. And yet, once you hear it, the whole room seems quieter for its presence. You lean back slightly in the chair. Outside the nearby window, the late afternoon light has begun to tilt, washing the air in warm gold. Dust motes drift lazily through the glow, like confetti from a celebration that ended long ago, but left behind its shimmer. The room catches the light just so on the grain of the table, the spine of a book, the rim of the teacup beside you, and in that brightness, something like memory stirs. Not a memory of anything specific, but of stillness itself, of simply being. And then you realize no one is coming. There is no archivist on their way. No call bell, no request placed. No appointment waits. You are here because you are here. And the chair allows that. It does not ask why, or for how long. In a world that so often values motion, achievement, productivity, this chair values presence. It values the quiet dignity of sitting without expectation. So you stay. Not long. Just long enough for your shoulders to ease, for the breath you didn't know you were holding to soften around the edges. Long enough for a question, not urgent or loud, but tender and patient, to rise in your chest and settle again. It doesn't need an answer. It only needed space. When you rise, the chair shifts slightly, not in protest, in acknowledgement. A gentle nod. Your hand traces the top of its worn rail, and then you walk back to the door. Your steps quieter now, more your own. The archive room stays exactly as it was, unmoved, unhurrying. The chair simple, mended, and unassuming remains in its place, not waiting for whoever next might need it. Or for someone who knows, with quiet certainty, that sometimes to sit is enough. The hallway narrows, not in size, exactly, but in feeling. Each step feels slower now, as though the air thickens into stillness, like a hush before the final page of a cherished book. You pass shuttered alcoves, curtained windows, doors barely ajar, all quiet. all watching maybe as you reach the last room. A faded brass handle meets your hand. The wood beneath it is worn, dry, and warm with age. You press gently. The door swings open without a sound. Sunlight greets you. The room feels like a held breath let go. Wide windows stretch across the far wall, their glass misted at the corners, faint streaks of time trailing down. Yet the light still pours in soft, golden and slow. It doesn't dazzle. It rests. This is the library. Or perhaps just the place where books come to sleep. The shelves aren't full. Some books lie open, their pages exposed to air as if mid-thought. Others lean together like companions in quiet conversation, their spines gently curved, unconcerned. With order. A few perch on windowsills, chairs, or directly on the floor, left there by someone who never needed to pick them up again. The air smells of dust, warm wood, and light resting on paper. Something like old linen, something like memory. And there are chairs, scattered everywhere, dots and plain, some plush. None remarkable on their own, but gathered like this, they seem at peace, as though they've grown tired of hosting stories, and have decided instead to simply be no chair calls you over. No seat begs to be chosen. And still without plan or thought, your feet carry you to a small armchair by the far window. Its fabric is faded to a pale green-gray. The cushion gives beneath you, quiet and just enough. You sink in, and the light moves gently, brushing your shoulder, your hands, your cheek. Outside, a field of tall grass bends in the slow breath of late afternoon. A bird hops briefly into view before vanishing. Dust turns slowly in the air. Time, if it still exists, has softened. You don't need to recall all that came before. Not the lavender garden, not the fireplace, not the music room, or the harpsichord, or the stool, not even the forgotten chair. They remain with you anyway, not as stories to be retold, but as textures. Textures of rest, of noticing, of letting. The chair beneath you does not pull your thoughts forward. It allows them to blur, to soften at the edges. It doesn't ask for meaning. It only offers quiet. You sit. You breathe. The light touches your face like a blessing. Somewhere the grass shifts. A breeze moves through the field. And for a moment, it feels as if the whole house breathes with you through windows, through books, through fabric and floorboards, and every silent chair. This place was never about discovering the finest chair. It was never about comparison, or winning, or worthiness. Not about elegance or history, or even comfort in its usual form. It was about something quieter, something older, something softer. How a simple, overlooked object, a place to pause could become a vessel for stillness, for presence, for time that asks nothing of you in return. You sit now, not to accomplish anything, but simply to be here. And that, in its quiet fullness, is more than enough. You close your eyes, gently, slowly, with no need for reason. There are no footsteps approaching, no questions rising, no names spoken. Just the breath in your lungs, steady and slow, and the dust in the sun, spinning gently like thoughts at rest. The chair holds you without expectation, without demand. In this moment, in this room, in this final light, you are exactly where you are meant to be. You need no map. You need no task. You simply need to sit. So now, we leave Elderbridge not with a ceremony or a flourish. There is no need for a final gesture or a grand goodbye. Instead, we step backward, softly, through the sunlit hush of the old halls, past doors left slightly ajar, through rooms still holding warmth, into air thick with memory and lavender and quiet wood. You remember the seats you chose and the ones you didn't. You remember silence that spoke louder than music. You remember stillness that offered more than movement ever could. You carry with you not just the memory of chairs, but the spaces between them, the flicker of a lantern, the quiet curve of a bench beneath trees, the feeling of being welcomed by something that never needed to speak. You remember the chair no one else chose and how it made room for you without judgment. This was never a story about comfort, never a story about beauty. It was always about stillness. It was always about grace. We sit not only because we are tired, but because sitting allows us to see differently. It quiets the noise and slows the rush and invites the unnoticed to return. In the pause, we soften. In the pause, we listen. In the pause, we remember who we are when nothing is required of us. Perhaps wherever you are now, you found such a place. A chair or a patch of light. A space in your own heart where time can rest. Let yourself sit. Let yourself rest. Let the world, for just a while, go on without you. There's nothing to prove, nothing to fix, no need to perform. Just the hush around you, just the breath within you. Just this moment, simple and still, and entirely enough. Thank you for wandering through Elderbridge, for pausing, for noticing, for choosing quiet when so much asks for noise. Let the hush return now. Let your thoughts soften. Let the light wrap around you like an old friend. Sleep deeply. Sleep peacefully. And if morning finds you, rise with gentleness. But if not, stay, breathe, be. That is all. Good night.